Welcome to another edition of Driven to Lead. I'm your host, Wayne Brannon. In this program, we explore the real stories from key executives to find the leadership lessons that drove their success, whether in good times or bad. We got a great program for you today, so let's make it happen. Well, I'm very happy today that we have with us Matthew Degyansky, the CEO of Drive On LLC out of San Francisco, California. Matthew has spent an entire career in the energy sector, working with many of the major players, the names that you would know, doing business development and also working as a major liaison for the global automotive business for many years. And now at Drive On, Matthew is leading some of the high technology moves where energy is going in the future. He's building partnerships and he's working on accelerating the decarbonization efforts. Matthew, great to have you on the program today.
Thank you, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be here and very honored to be able to share our thoughts together.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great conversation. And you know, energy is so much of a prevalent part of all of our lives. And sometimes we take it for granted until the prices at the gas pump get to be $5 or something. And then we pay a special attention to it. It has so much of an impact on the overall economy as in total. And I think it's something that is really changing so fast that it's difficult for most of us in the world to keep track of what's going on. So I know at Drive On, you're looking to do some things differently and help people to build relationships, change policy, get technologies integrated in a more meaningful way. Tell us a little bit about those efforts and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think traditionally in the energy sector, it was quite simple as it relates to the value chain and the partner chain. And this is particularly true, of course, of transport. You had major oil companies that were manufacturing fuels to supply passenger cars and trucks to power them on the roads. With the beginning of the new transport environment, where we're looking at electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, in some cases, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, it's much more complex than it was in the traditional model. And so what we're finding today is that the oil companies and the automotive companies alone cannot fulfill the development of this whole ecosystem. There has to be many other players, including technology providers, infrastructure providers, dispensers, that are all changing the way they go about things in order to help transition mobility to sustainable mobility, trying to reduce carbon as best we can. And so what I thought I would do with Drive On is to really foster these partnerships between the technology providers, the infrastructure providers, the dispensing providers, and the major energy and automotive sectors in order to help advance this. Because those companies that tend to be smaller and in most cases startups have excellent technology, but they struggle with dealing with the more mature industries of big auto and big oil.
Yeah,
Uh,
not the easiest companies to work with always if you're a
exactly,
small or emerging technology player, right?
exactly. And so part of really what I do is I do two things. Number one is I make the introductions of my startup clients into big oil and big auto. And number two, I help them navigate the fairly complex organizations that oftentimes are multifunctional. Oftentimes they do, work with a fair degree of overlap. And in that way, I can help sort of advance the partnerships with my clients with the major oil and energy companies. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, I think when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, getting ready for this discussion, you told me that you were working with a couple of clients on hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen producers, hydrogen storage and transport space kind of arenas. Is hydrogen kind of one of the things that we should look at as being a mainstream player going forward?
It's a great question. Indeed, it's a fair amount of my focus at this point in time. The answer to the question I would say is maybe. And the
Yeah.
maybe
Is
has
that
to
a definite maybe?
a definite maybe. A definite
Okay,
maybe.
yeah. Okay.
And the reason I say that is because it has high promise relative to its impact on carbon reduction, but
Mhm.
it's not without its challenges today, which really have to do with ways to find increasing efficiency in order to provide more cost-effective energy and molecules to the market. That's really the biggest thing, and really the biggest thing that we're working on. And so hydrogen is going to have, we feel, an important place in the energy ecosystem going forward, but it's going to be somewhat stepwise by sector and not so much driven by transport, but rather more, in my view, stationary power and things of
Okay.
that nature, where there's probably more of a need for uh, renewable energy deployment when you look at some of the challenges we have today and things like powering data centers, which is becoming a huge part of how the energy ecosystem's looking. So the answer
Right.
is maybe, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because some of us might be familiar with hydrogen fuel cells from a standpoint of being deployed in automobiles. I mean, some of those solutions were even going back as early as the 1980s and 1990s. The feasibility of it, the cost of it, the infrastructure and whatnot being at issue. Just so the audience has a good idea, we're talking about using hydrogen as a fuel to produce electricity and then using electricity for and whatever it needs to be used for. You were talking about stationary locations for new data centers, could also be used on board to produce electricity to drive electric motors to drive an electric vehicle. So that's some of the things that I guess our viewers might be most familiar with. Um, is it important, do you think, as we go forward as a global economy, that we agree to some extent at some point on what the mainstream means of production will be for, let's say, power, for energy, for electricity that we'll need to power the world? Do we have to decide on hydrogen? Do we have to decide on what role that solar and wind and other, renewables will provide? Or is it most important that we keep all of these options moving and see which one emerges as the most cost effective and the most meaningful to drive the needs we have?
Yeah, great question. I'll render my personal opinion on this. It's all, in my opinion, it's all driven by scale and the associated economics, right? And then you take into effect the environmental effects around that, and particularly in the case of wind and solar as it relates to land usage. Um, I think there's a place for all of it, indeed, and that's pretty much what all of us in the renewable space are saying. It's not so much an either or world; it's an and world. There's going to be a need for all of it, right? The real winners will be those that can achieve scale and the associated economics to help build the higher demand as we go forward. But what ends up being the challenge, and this is pretty much well known in the space, is what we call the chicken or egg dynamic, right? Do you invest to make the affordable energy that drives the demand, or do you try to drive the vehicle configuration and portfolio in the direction of the mode of renewable energy that you want to provide to help justify that investment? So it is
Mhm.
chicken or egg, indeed, because in both cases it makes it quite difficult. You having yourself worked for an automotive company, you know that automotive companies now are making big bets on how they configure their portfolios in order to enable sustainable transport. But in many cases, there's a very unclear picture of how these will evolve vis-a-vis the demand side based on how the ecosystem is developed of supply, right? And this is
Mhm.
even in the case of electric vehicle ecosystem or environment, let alone hydrogen. And so what the auto companies are having to do and the truck companies are trying to be as diverse as possible with as many offerings as possible in order to help sort of have the ability to pivot with their portfolio depending on how demand and how supply unfolds. So the short
Yeah,
answer to your question is need it all, but the
yeah,
demand and economics are really driving everything here.
yeah. Certainly in the auto industry, I think the companies that are going to win are winning now are the ones that have done just what you said. They've made the big bets, the big investments in the future technologies that they know will be needed, but they have to pivot as the demand and the market will accept these technologies and as they're feasible, more feasible. So we'll see who the winners and losers are over time. I just want us as a global community of users of energy in the business realm, but also in the personal one. You just want to think that we're going to be able to continue to grow and evolve because we'll have sufficient energy to do it, and that energy will be clean and it will be affordable for everything. So the work you're doing is critical. We appreciate it, and the fact that you're looking to build partnerships and make connections between the various entities working on these things is really an important part because not everyone agrees, not everyone's running in the same circles, and not everyone has more of a global perspective like you were, I think very fortunate, as you said, to be a part of with the previous experience you had in the energy sector. So, as you think about building partnerships, where are you going to put most of your efforts, do you think, in with Drive On going forward in the next couple of years?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And it's a good one because it's probably important to point out a little bit about my motivation, right, for doing this as well. And they really maybe number a few, and probably are prioritized as follows. My first motivation is to be useful and helpful, right? And this really gets to the core of what this podcast is about relative to leadership. What I'd like to do is leverage my 40 plus years in commercial business development to help others develop skills to be effective about doing this same kind of work. That's really my first sort of priority, what I want to do. Secondly, it has to do with being helpful and making an impact on the move to a lower carbon world, right? And that's my second motivation. And
Mhm.
so, as it relates to drive on focus, we're sort of going towards the areas that are less developed, which is why my focus, as said earlier, is more in the hydrogen sector and less so in the battery electric vehicle sector. And the reason for that is simple. The battery electric vehicle sector is quite more developed, right? That right now, with established partnerships, more evolution of infrastructure, better dispensing um, uh, uh, networks that have been put in place that need maybe a little bit less of partnership development than do these more emerging technologies like hydrogen. And so, for the foreseeable future, I see myself more getting involved in the more developing areas of renewable energy, including hydrogen. And beyond that, we'll sort of have to see what else maybe transpires. Do a little bit of work in software as well and in AI, which can also lend to lower carbon as it relates to improving efficiency of road transport. So I'm doing a little bit of work of that as well. But I'd have to say, in the future, what Drive On really is aiming to be is two things. Number one, be helpful to others and to companies, and number two, to really help drive the less evolved technologies into more common acceptance and usage in order to have us have more
Right.
diverse solutions.
Yeah, no, I think that's an honorable goal, and it's what you said is so true. As you pointed out, we focus on leadership lessons with this program, and my business is exactly the same way. I attempt to add value wherever I go, right? If you don't create value for someone, then you're not really providing the kinds of service that the company needs or the individual needs, whether you're coaching a business or coaching an individual. So I'm really happy to hear that you have that perspective as well. I think it's the right one. Lord knows there's many people out there who are doing consulting like we're doing, and they're not adding value. They're not focused on that. They're focused on other things. Not to badmouth anybody, but I've had companies come in when I was working in the corporate arena that were smart people and nice people, and they made great PowerPoint charts, but they really didn't leave us any better off than we were before they came in. And so, like you, I think our prime directive is to make the client successful and add value for them. And if we do that, I think things will take everything else will take care of itself. Matthew, let's transition right now. Why don't we talk about a story from your past or from your current business that you feel would be a good catalyst for talking about some leadership lessons. So tell us a story about a success or a failure or anything that you feel is relevant, and set it up for us. Give us a little bit of background, and let's delve into it and see what we can find.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, this one is quite clear in my mind, and it was a big lesson that I learned in my 40 plus year career working in the energy industry. It was about mid-career for me, and I was running a global team of business development managers that were not so much in the downstream of the energy business, but more in the chemical side of the business.
Hmm.
And so one of my direct reports, one of my team members, was responsible for the U.S. portion of the business that for which I was responsible. And I ran into a situation where maybe I wasn't quite as on top of the work he was doing and the specifics around it as I probably should have been, which led to a pretty major, um, let's say, misstep, right, within the company business objectives, and it had to do with matching, pricing projections versus margin projections. And
Mm.
this really led to a situation in my career where I was not rated highly for that year's performance, and was moved
Sorry.
into another position. And,
Yeah.
and the learning was that I wasn't close enough to what my team members were doing, and I needed to work on that to improve. But that's not the lesson here that I'd like to share with everybody, that because there's more to the story. So what happened was I moved to this new division within a major company, which is more on the downstream side, and once again was responsible for a global team. And then when I took on this new global team, what I did is I basically overcompensated and overcorrected for what my learning was in the former
Mhm.
case. And I became a micromanager. I was on top of them constantly. I was always checking and rechecking their work. I was so intensively following up on what they did that there began to, specifically with one employee, there began to become issues of trust, like I wasn't trusting the work they were doing.
Mhm.
And so the pendulum basically swung the other way too far, right? I overcompensated. And so what ended up happening was I went through some tough times. I was putting people on performance, improvement plans and things of that nature, probably prematurely. And it took me about a year to get through this until I learned that, you know what? Let's move it more towards the middle, more towards moderation. That you are good at what, this is me talking to myself. You are good at what you do. You're here to help other
Mhm.
people. You did learn from your prior experience, but you don't have to overcompensate and overexert like you have. And that was really a learning for me. And so after I sort of moved back to the middle and moderated my behaviors and my approach, it became much more comfortable in the subsequent years in my leadership journey, and my relationships with my team members vastly improved. And frankly, the performance of our group also improved. So big learning there. It's important,
Yeah.
lessons learned, but when you make the behavioral modification, be careful not to overcompensate, right? That's really important. Yep.
Yeah. So that there's a lot to unpack there, and I think is really interesting. Let's focus on the overcompensation because that is the main point you're trying to make here. We've talked about delegation and how difficult it is to become a delegator when you're really a doer, and we've talked about people who are at too high a level in the company and they don't pay enough attention to the details so that they don't understand what needs to be done. In this overcompensation, now that you look back on it and then you made the correction of the overcorrection eventually, do you think that you were a little bit angry about the fact that you had been redeployed and this had happened to you? Did you blame someone else? Did you blame yourself? Was there some sort of a retribution, do you think, in this overcorrection, or was it really you genuinely just trying to be better when you made the overcorrection?
It's a great question. Yeah, very, very insightful one, and actually one I've not confronted. So thanks for bringing it up, Wayne. It's a very good question. I would have to say that it was a combination of both, really. It really was. It was a combination of me really wanting to improve and wanting to do a better job of what I've learned. But there also was a part of me that wanted to show, right? My past organization, that you know, their move of my career was
Mhm.
misplaced, right? So there was a little bit of both. There was a little bit of both.
So you
Yep.
so you thought maybe the movement to another area, kind of taking you out of the problem as a punitive action, was a little too severe given what had happened?
I did. I did indeed.
Hmm.
Yeah, without
Hmm.
question. Yeah,
It,
indeed.
it, that is often the case. I mean,
Yep.
I think if if it would have just been pointed out to you what happened, and it was, obviously you realized what happened, it was clear to everybody that your manager was doing things that weren't correct or that were inappropriate, and you weren't on top of it. Um, could have been a could have been a different
Right.
type of action that would have been taken. Let me ask you this. Was this person who, this going back to the first part of the story, the person who was running the US business who had made the miscalculations or whatever, was this something he was doing in a deceptive, he or she was doing in a deceptive way, or was it just a lack of knowledge and capability that caused it?
It's a good, great question, and it's a very clear answer. It had nothing to do with any uh, motives other than maybe not as careful as they should have been. Yeah, that
Okay.
was it.
All
Yeah,
right.
it was attention to detail lacking was what it was, and that
Okay.
was a big part of my learning was to improve my attention to detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you probably had a great deal of trust in this individual, and maybe respect for them as well, as a key subordinate on your team. And that may have contributed to you giving them more rope than maybe you should have.
Correct. Yeah, in part because of the years' experience. A very experienced person.
Hmm.
Was
Yeah.
about maybe 10 years my senior at the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a big part of it. Yeah, indeed.
And that person got corrective action as well.
They did. Those stayed in role though. They did stay in
Okay.
role. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, going back to the overcorrection, I think you mentioned something that was really encouraging at the end of your telling the story, and that is that your relationship with your team, your new team, improved tremendously when you stopped micromanaging them and you gave them a little more rope and you found that happy middle ground where you provided some trust as opposed to zero trust maybe when you first arrived, and then the relationships improved. So you hadn't burned any bridges, you hadn't destroyed your relationship with your team, and they responded pretty quickly to the change. What did you announce that you're making a change? Did you say, team, I've been too harsh on you. I've been micromanaging you, and we're going to make a change today, and I'm going to give you more leeway to run your business? Or did you just kind of execute it in a quiet way and let it evolve over time?
Yeah, it was more the latter for sure. But in some
Hmm.
cases, though, I did openly, offer, my apologies that maybe I was overreaching
Hmm.
or maybe micromanaging
Right,
to those where
right.
I was doing it most in a one-on-one basis. But the overall
Right.
behavior more or less evolved, and I think that's certainly led to the development of a positive environment.
Yeah. Well, I think as we look at this, it's easy to overreact to things, for lots of reasons. We touched on a few of them. But to be a good leader, we need to keep our own emotions balanced. We need to keep our logical mind fully engaged, and we need to do the right thing, even if we get the wrong signals, or we might feel they're the wrong signals. If we get the wrong signals in from our leadership teams or from the organization. So good on you that you came to that realization um, quickly, and that you made the change and you ended in a really good place, and it made you a stronger leader. And you're able to tell that story today with a smile on your face because you're proud of the fact that you were able to grow and learn and be a better leader as a result of it. So I think that's very helpful. So that's a great learning. If you think about that just in from a broader perspective, do you think that it did make a difference with the people who had kind of moved you, the leadership team who had moved you? Did they see that your success and the balance that you were operating with was more appropriately placed, and that because you continued to succeed in the organization and you continued to grow from that? So not only did your team see it, but I expect your leadership and the company itself benefited because you mentioned the performance of your group improved.
Um, yeah, good question. I think indeed. I think my former work group management saw that this was a better fit for my skill set and my bent and desires, right? Which was more of a relationship, business development, commercial selling environment that is less technical and more around the commercial side. Where I came
Hmm.
from was more of a technical sale where they had lesser appreciation of the nuances of relationship and commercial development. And so I think
Okay.
the former management saw this as a better move for my skill set, which is a good thing. And I think
Hmm.
the new team for which I was working, or to which I reported, also saw that my skill set was a better fit in this area rather than the former, chemical side with a higher technology sort of environment.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that piece of
Yeah.
it. Well, the point I was trying to make is also that you continue to succeed in your career. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this one, mark on your record that caused a
Yeah.
move, you made corrective action, you built a good team, the skill
Right.
set fit was better, yeah, but you produced better performance and you continue to advance in your career. So making those leadership corrections, because not, honestly, in very few companies, even with the leadership training programs and leadership development programs that are in place, many of them are great. But I would say, from my experience, I see that there's really a need to learn on the job more than there is that kind of real training and development that you would expect for something as important as leadership. And
Yeah.
so, that self-correction was a good example of what we all need to do all the time because you know what? We all make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We get our little egos out of balance, or we try to overpower some situations, or maybe we're too collaborative in some situations and we move too slowly. All of those things are present in the fine tuning of just the right balance to be a great leader. And so
Yeah. Indeed.
in the leadership journey. So as we're kind of wrapping up our discussion today, Matt, what would you tell your younger self, either about this situation or just in general, now that you've been around for a few decades, working in a corporate environment, now working in your own business and leading these new initiatives? If you look back and told your younger self something, what would be the most productive thing you could tell yourself?
Yeah, it's really great. It has to, good question. It has to do with specifically interactions with other people, whether they're people on my team, my management, clients, my family, any of my
Mm,
my human interactions. And that is this. It's quite simple. And my wife has helped me with this as well as we've gone through our journey together. And that is there's more than one way to do it. Very simply put, there's more than one
mhm,
way to do it. Uh, Oftentimes, as a leader, I felt that my stewarding and helping my team members, or helping to influence decisions with a client, or helping sort of coach my children, came from the perspective of what I would do, right? What I would do.
mhm,
However, they're not me, right? I'm me. And so what I learned was that how people go about things are by definition going to be different than how I would go about things. And the more I worked within the environment as a leader of our family, as well as a leader in industry, I've learned that there are more than one thing ways to do this. And so what I've learned over the years is to open up my mind about how people go about things. I'll give you a quick example. I'm very much a precrastinator. I do things well in advance in order to ensure preparedness and to ensure I've made sure everything is ready to go whenever I have to present or conduct a meeting. One of my team members in this last successful group for which I led
mhm,
was very much a procrastinator,
mhm.
and so he would pull all nighters to get ready for presentations and stuff, and then do it the night before, that morning of, so to speak. It
Right,
can be a long time to get used to that, right? Uh,
right.
because there was very little time to review, wasn't sure where it was going. But what I learned was that that pressure of him staying up all night and doing a presentation was how he best and most effectively performed. And after a
Mhm,
few times when I found that he completely nailed the presentation and how he went about it based on his method, I had to let go and not offer any expectation that he should do it my way, right? And this is a key part of leadership that I've learned over the years is that
mhm.
it doesn't have to be my way of going about it. What what is what is accountable is the results, and then doing them in an honest, ethical, value-driven, integrity-driven
Sure.
way, right? That's what it
Right.
is, and
Yeah.
compliant way, of course. And so
Yeah.
that was my biggest learning. Be
Yeah.
open-minded, be open-minded about how others go about the job.
Yeah. That's really a great insight. To be open-minded is always a good thing, but to realize that everyone's an individual and does things differently. Probably the guy who procrastinated all night probably made you nervous as all get out, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
Because it was the exact opposite of what you were doing, and you knew you weren't ready, and you'd have been ready days ago. But
Oh my
good on
gosh.
you that you
Yeah.
did that. And I would add that my wife has helped me understand that there's other ways to do things over the years as well. So God
Yeah.
bless her. We've been together for almost 50 years, married for 44, and I think a relationship like a marriage or a long friendship or a long partnership in a business relationship are the times when you really need to learn not only to compromise, as some people say, but to really learn from one another and respect one another well enough to take some input. Sometimes it's not so easy to receive at times, right?
Yep.
So that's a good lesson. Good for you. I think that's worthy. So now let's fast forward in the other direction. You and I are going to be sitting having a beverage in a beautiful sunset someday. What are we talking about that's going to be the thing you're most proud of?
Pretty simple, pretty high level. I was very helpful and useful to others. That's
Hmm.
really it. And in doing so, I helped make a difference in whatever endeavor I engaged in, whether it's family leader or industry or, member of a fitness center, right? I was
Right.
helpful, useful to others, and through really displaying an attitude of open-mindedness and love for others. Really, that's
Yeah.
really what I would be most proud of, and
Yeah.
that's where I conduct my life today. Really.
Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. I'm a follower of Christ, and he tells us to love everybody. And I have to say, some people are easier to love at a distance, let's be honest. But boy, it's a worthwhile endeavor to love
Indeed.
everyone so much that you'll listen to them, that you'll care about them.
Yep.
And the motto for my company, Great Road Partners, is the high road leads to a better place. And we've had the opportunity, both in my corporate career and in my current endeavors, to see how true that is and how much better it makes us. So, if you're living your life touching other people in a positive way and making that your prime directive, then congratulations. I think you're reinforcing that. Just reinforces what a lot of the rest of us feel and know as well.
Thank you.
So, Matt, a great conversation today. Thank you so much for being on the program. I think that others might be interested in the work you do. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they reach you?
Sure, I think email might be the best way. Thank you. And it's Matt Djan at driveonllc.com. It's a kind of a long email, but hopefully I'm on LinkedIn, and so welcome reach outs on LinkedIn. And my Blink electric or e-card is on there as well, so I can easily be contacted via that mechanism and by both email and cell phone. So look forward to hearing from members who'd like to have a further conversation about leadership. I've loved this topic and really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're getting a lot of good feedback from a lot of people about these programs, and I think you've made a significant contribution to this kind of collection of stories from key executives. So thanks for that, and I wish you a great day. All the best, and God bless.
Thanks, Wayne. Same to you. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye bye now.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for being with us. If you like our conversations, please feel free to hit the subscribe and like buttons. And if you'd like to make comments, ask questions, or even explore being a guest on this program, you can reach out to us via email. It's wayne@greatroad.com. That's WAYNE at GR8ROAD.com. And until next time, always remember the high road leads to a better place.